to Robot Unicorn, hosted by my parents, Jess and Scott. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And we're back. This is part 2 of the series.
And the series is on?
When a child's brain gets stuck on something.
Before you go, I just want to say thank you for doing the introduction to every episode.
Oh, yeah. That's
Remember
right.
that? You're the voice that says, "Welcome to Robot Unicorn with my parents."
Jess and Scott.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's you.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, hon. You're going to go play again, okay?
Bye.
Goodbye.
Okay.
Pizza.
And then, pizza and take your water.
It's bubbly water.
Yes, bubbly water. You're right. So this is the second part of this episode. If you want to hear more from our daughter, she explains a bit about a situation that happened to her the other day where she got stuck on building a kite. So Jess interviewed her at the beginning of that episode, and we just kind of go through what it means to be stuck and why that happens and everything and who it might happen to more. And now she's lingering in the background of our studio, smiling at me as we record. Hi. Okay, so in that episode, we just kind of talked about what it means to be stuck, situations where kids might get more stuck, that kind of thing. But today we want to move into a few more practical parts. We want to talk about, let's say your child's brain is stuck, or maybe even our brain is stuck. How can we actually move through that? So one of the main things that you and I were talking about, and you, I think, have said a lot of times over the years at Nurtured First, is to borrow the calm from someone else. So let's say we are our child's calm. So can you explain a bit about that?
Yeah, I explained this a bit in the last episode, but I think it's a good place to restart.
Yeah.
So when children are born, they have the ability to express their emotions, right? Like we see that with a baby crying, with a toddler having a tantrum. But the part of their brain that's responsible for logic, reasoning, critical thinking skills, which is called the prefrontal cortex, is still developing. So they have all these emotions, these feelings that they express, but they don't necessarily have the tools to do that in a healthy way or to communicate what they're feeling. So they cry a lot. So in the early years, if we want to teach our children how to eventually regulate their emotions, there's a lot of talk out there like self-regulation, which is kind of BS in my opinion, because you can't really teach a 2-year-old how to self-regulate. That's just not a developmentally appropriate thing. Children need to regulate with someone else, right? And so how they learn to find their own calm is through repeated exposures to their parent or their trusted caregiver, acting in the way that we eventually want them to act. And that's as simple as it really is. Like I think about that when our toddler has she's almost 4, but she's still a toddler to me. When she has a big meltdown, right? It's like, well, how do I eventually want her to act when she has this meltdown? I don't want her to yell at me and, send me to my room or, all these things. I want her to be able to talk it through with me. So then my goal is to act in the way that I hope she'll act. So I act calm. I maybe narrate what's going on out loud, like, oh, you really wanted to go outside, but it's time to stay in and have dinner. And I let her have her tears. And if children have repeated exposures, and not just like 1 or 2, like hundreds of exposures to this when they're little.
Maybe thousands.
Maybe thousands. Yeah, probably thousands. Because you think about how many times a day a toddler has a tantrum. Around the ages of 5 to 7, we start to see a shift where they are starting to take on the way that you responded to their emotions. And this is the big shift, the 5 to 7 shift, where we should, hopefully, with the right conditions, start to see less meltdowns, less aggressive behavior, less protests and quote unquote defiance, because they're starting to learn how to be reasonable and logical based on their interactions with you. But we have to have those conditions in early childhood in order to get there. So a lot of children that I work with or end up seeing, their parents may not have known that. And that's fair. So the parents just went off what they learned when they were kids, which is like, we yell at our kids, we send them to timeouts, we send them away from us, when they have these big emotions. And now they're between the ages of 5 to 7 and they haven't learned how to regulate their own emotions. And so we have to go in and do that work a little later on. It's not impossible. We can always still do the work, but sometimes it just takes more time when we start doing it when they're a little older. I do want to make a note too about like one other thing that I think has taken away from a lot of children's ability to learn how to regulate, which is screens. I saw a reel being like, screens are the new belt. Like, and like
Yeah.
maybe our parents' generation, they have like the belt that they like hit kids with. And it sounds funny, but in a way it's kind of true. Like if when your parents were kids or when you were a child, you were like spanked or, had the belt strap of the paddle or whatever it was when you were upset, it taught you to like stop being upset, right? And now I think one of the problems that we have is when little toddlers are upset, we we hand them a tablet or we hand them the phone. We put on a show or a game or something like that. And so they never actually have to move through with another human being's calm, that emotion. And so then when they get to school age and they don't have a tablet to calm them down, to regulate them, they don't know what to do. And they're not afraid, like our parents' generation was, of other adults because they had the belt. And so I do think we're seeing a lot of kids around that early school age who haven't reached that shift for whatever reason. And now they're struggling a lot. So that was a whole rant, but it's just something my brain has been kind of stuck on lately.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've done multiple episodes on the digital world and children.
Yeah.
So we can even maybe link to those too so that people can listen to them. But I think that it is a good point. I would agree with that. Okay, but let's move now into actual strategies. Not the why behind it, but let's go into actual strategies. So you talked about a few different things. So I'm just going to list them out and then maybe you can explain and maybe you have a few more. You've talked about naming emotions. There's scaffolding. And then you've talked about all kinds of activities. And I think we've done episodes on this too, but like freeze dance, imaginative play, strategy instruction. So can you go through some of these? And if you have any others that maybe can help children work through and develop the ability to shift gears and get out of the stuckness that they're in?
Absolutely. So the first thing I want to say, and this is maybe goes a little more why, but we never touched on this the last episode, and I did want to talk about it. The last episode, we talked about how children can know something, like they can know the rules, but they can't necessarily act on them. And I think that this, again, is one of the other problems that we have in the way that we're dealing with stuckness for children, where we're teaching them a lot of coping skills, like take a deep breath, all these things. And they might, in the moment that you're teaching them, be able to list it off, right? Just like they're learning their letters and their numbers, like take a deep breath, do this, do that. But that doesn't necessarily connect with what they can actually do in the moment when they're stuck. And so I think, again, we can have that unrealistic expectation that my child knows what to do. They know to take a deep breath, to walk away, to do this, to do that. But that social emotional learning doesn't necessarily connect with how the child's brain actually works. And it can lead to frustration in parents and teachers because they're saying, well, I'm teaching them all these things. Why can't they do it? Because in that moment, if they don't have the ability and that prefrontal cortex hasn't developed yet, they're not going to be able to actually use the tools, right? So they're going to heavily rely on you at first. So what I like to call narrating can be really helpful. You don't want to say too much. When a child's having a hard time, saying a ton of words is not necessarily going to help them, right?
Well, they're not going to listen anyway. I doubt it will register.
But one thing that can be helpful in just like getting them unstuck is just making sure that they know that you understand how they're feeling, right? So whether it's like, you're so mad, you're the maddest you could be, like just saying something like that, or you really don't want to go outside. You don't want to go. I hear you. Because sometimes they get stuck and they keep escalating on it because they're just like, you're not getting it, right? And I feel like I would be the same way if I was trying to tell you something. I'm like, Scott, you're not getting it. Like, I feel like
we both said that to each other.
And I would just get more and more angry until you're like, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is do, and do. And then I'd be like, yes, okay, you got it. But if I don't think you understand, I'm just going to keep saying it. And it's the same for kids. So that's where the narration is really helpful. And all you're really doing is just saying, I hear you. You don't want to go outside. Or I hear you. You don't want to leave the park. Just making sure that they know. And then what happens when you frequently narrate out what's going on is they learn how to have the words for the situation. And eventually they can just say, I don't want to leave the park, instead of full-blown explosion, meltdown on the ground, right?
I'm so mad.
Yeah. And then that actually goes into the scaffolding. So I always think of everything kind of like a laddered approach. So you're not necessarily going to go with a toddler who gets stuck all the time and their brain like can't think of another thought to a toddler who goes, okay, mommy, I would like to stay at the park for 10 more minutes today. That's just not going to happen, right? There has to be steps in between. Or even a child who hits their sibling and you want them to come to you and say what's frustrating them. There's got to be steps in between. So for example, a first step might be, okay, well, instead of screaming, I hate you, and yelling and slamming doors, can you yell as loud as you can? I'm so mad. I'm really, really mad. And parents will be like, well, I don't want my kids yelling. Like, that's okay. They're not going to always yell that. That's step one. And once they've kind of mastered that step and they can just yell, I'm so mad right now, then it's okay. Let's teach another skill that kind of gets us closer to coming to you and saying, I'm having a really hard time. So that's where the scaffolding comes into place. And it's really about okay, well, what's one step kind of closer to what you want them to do, instead of expecting that a 3-year-old is going to, have these really mature conversations about their feelings. The age appropriate activities that you were talking about, these really just help with impulse control. And what we talked about in the last episode is that children do need to figure out how to control their impulses a little better, often before they stop being so stuck on things. So some games that help with impulse control is like freeze dance, right? It's just things where you have to start and stop your body. So freeze dance, what time is it, Mr. Wolf, is another good one. Like red light, green light, musical chairs. We did that recently with the girls. It's a bit chaotic.
Yeah, and don't do that one right before bed because there are some crying. Tears.
Speaking of getting stuck, kind of backfired on us.
That didn't work.
But those are all really good games. Basically anything that's like a start-stop. But I would say above and beyond all of those things, something that I don't think mentioned in your list of things I talk about, maybe you did, would be play, being playful.
Imaginative play.
You have that on there. Oh,
right in there.
Sorry. That should just be its own question though. That should be its own episode.
Oh, okay.
But yes, the best thing we can do to get a child out of stuckness is to speak their language. It's not always going to work every time, but a lot of the times we get too serious about our child's stuckness, right? They're so upset and it's getting us upset. And we're coming in with logic and reasoning being like, this isn't logical. It doesn't make sense. You don't have to care so much about whether you sit in this chair or this chair for dinner. They're both chairs. Who cares what chair you sit on, right? But if we can engage them through play, now we're speaking a child's language. And they're going to be a lot more willing to work with us, and play can get their brain unstuck thinking about something else. So play, I think, is really the magic ingredient for a lot of parents who are stuck in these constant power struggles with their children. The chair example is just key because our daughters all have a certain chair and they have to sit in it. And maybe it's not the same chair as last night, but in their mind, tonight, this is where I'm sitting, right? Yeah. And there's 2 ways you could approach it. Okay, I could be really logical. Listen, you sat in this other chair last night and now you want to sit in this chair. They're both chairs. Just sit in the chair you were in last night. I already put your food there. It's fine, and I'm sure I've said that.
Yep.
Yeah, Scott's that sounds actually really familiar. Or I could pick up a banana on the counter and be like, oh, so weird. Someone's calling. And they're saying that that's not your chair tonight and you have to sit over here. So strange that they would call me on this banana phone, talk to them. And before you know it, they're talking on a banana phone and they're much more willing to want to work with you because now you've engaged in their language. So things like that can really help your child move from being stuck to unstuck.
Yeah, and I feel as though often we have commented on the fact that if we let them play after they've been stuck, we will even hear them playing with each other, and we'll hear a variation of the situation they were just in, and they're trying to play through it with their sisters.
Yeah.
So after they've either successfully or unsuccessfully had a stuck brain and gotten through it, we'll often hear them in the corner playing with their Barbies or something like that. And they'll be whispering about the situation that they were just in. And the mom is saying to the child something, or the dad is saying something to the child, and the child fights back. And the mom's like, no, this is how it has to go. And they seem to be able to resolve a lot of those things through that play too.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point too. It's and I think this is your next question, children who get kind of chronically stuck, right? So those are kind of in the moment strategies, things that you can do, right? I guess the games are a little more proactive, but a chronically stuck child, the question really is why? Why are they stuck all the time? And what we've been talking about throughout is creating environments where kids can do well. And that's one of the first things I'd probably look at for a chronically stuck child, meaning a child whose brain is just constantly stuck on this, stuck on that, crying, appears like defiance, not listening to their parent. So I'd say, what's really going on here? How much of this is developmentally appropriate? Probably a lot, but maybe there's some little environmental tweaks we can make. And when you're talking about play, that was one of them. When does this child have a chance to play it out? Really, to play out what's going on in their life. And so whether they like to play with Barbies or cars or dinosaurs or sticks outside, doesn't really matter what it is they're playing with.
I mean, our children, obviously, if you listen to the last episode, love playing with a piece of paper with a string attached to it. And that has created hours of fun.
And when they were done with this today, they played outside with a single stick for another hour. So The play is really a critical piece. And I will often ask parents that whose children are just constantly stuck on everything. Well, when do they have that downtime? When do they have the play? And I think a lot of kids are very busy, especially that 5 to 7 age, like just starting school. They're in school all day, every day, extracurriculars, all like every night. And then there's no time to just exist.
So I actually had 2 follow-up questions for you on that, but with the extracurriculars, would you ever consider that to be play?
Well, I talked recently with someone and I loved this idea who set up something, it's an extracurricular, like parents can sign up for it because often parents like need that time, right? That extracurricular time for work or outlet for their child to like run around and play if they don't have space that they can do that at home, all these things. And it's literally just a play center. So like kids can come, parents can pay for it. They can go like 1 or 2 nights a week or whatever it is. And there's just crafts and places to run and jump and play and just like exist. But it's an extracurricular. So parents can still like, they can sit and like do their work for an hour or whatever it is. And I loved the idea. I was like, that is what I'm talking about, where we can respect a parent's need to have this like this time and for the child to get out the energy and all of those solid reasons why parents put their kids in extracurriculars, but it's just free play. So
you wouldn't consider our girls going to karate as play?
No.
Okay.
Karate would not be play. Anything structured, anything where there's demands and like rules that has to be followed and it has to be done a certain way is not play.
Okay.
Is it bad? No, it's just not play.
Okay.
And so play needs to be no demand. Like even a clear start to finish craft is not necessarily play.
So like me building Lego is not play?
Well, it might be play for you as an adult. And maybe for some children, like they would really enjoy that. But for me as a child, if you were like, here, follow this set of 10 instructions and you have to make this Lego thing, that would feel like work.
Right.
So play is really important for us. Is a child getting enough sleep? Are they getting enough like just time with no demands? The relationship with the parent, right? So sometimes kids get really stuck because they're trying to like protect themselves from feeling hurt by their parent, by their caregiver. Maybe there's been some stress there, some ruptures in the relationship, right? Like, even sometimes a new baby comes in and parents get really stressed or there's financial stresses or whatever it is. And we let that out on our kids and then they feel it. And as soon as they start to feel that rupture in the relationship, they put up a bit of a guard and they start getting really defendant and it comes out in stuckness. So sometimes just nurturing the relationship, doing things together, trying to get back on the same page, apologizing can help eliminate stuckness as well. So those are like the greater kind of conditions, I would say, that can help alleviate a child who's constantly stuck. And then maybe sometimes too, if you're still doing all those things, like I have some fantastic parents I'm thinking about that I work with who are doing all those things and then their child's still constantly stuck. Sometimes we have to ask ourselves about potential neurodivergence or what else might be going on for the child when we have all these conditions in place, yet the child still isn't thriving for whatever reason.
And when do you think is that during that 5 to 7 or 5 to 9 shift? And if you're like not seeing any progress, you would be like, okay, maybe this is a possibility here that we should get looked at?
Yeah, I kind of see like the 6 to 9 range. It's like, especially when I see, okay, we have these fantastic parents, they're doing all the things, child has plenty of time for rest and play, great relationship with their teacher, great relationship with their parents, like everything else is there, yet they're still constantly stuck and having these really extreme meltdowns and like can't seem to get them to stop moving their body or fidgeting, like all of these things. Then sometimes I'm like, okay, well, maybe there's something else going on here above and beyond like just your typical child's stuckness. And we might want to investigate that. Not that we medicate the child for it necessarily, though I'm not against medication. It's so that we can have more information. And then we might work with the child a little differently if we find out they're autistic or they have ADHD or whatever it is, right? But I like to see us first trying these other things to see, is this just, we need to change the conditions a little bit. Hey friends, so at pickup last week, our daughter asked Scott a truly kind of tricky question in front of her younger siblings. Scott was telling me that when he heard a question like this, he used to panic, but this time he had a plan. And he said to our daughter, "Thank you for asking. Let's talk tonight when we've got privacy." And that's a line that he learned straight from our new body safety and consent course at Nurtured First. So this new body safety and consent course is taught by me. So Jess, if you listen to this podcast, you know me. I'm a child therapist and a mom of 3, and I have taught body safety and consent education for years. This course takes all my years of experience teaching this education and gives you calm, age-appropriate language for body parts, consent, and boundaries. You'll learn how to teach your kids that no means no. You'll learn how to teach them to read facial cues. You'll talk about safe and unsafe touch, and you'll even teach them about their uh-oh feeling. There's guidance inside this course for the real life stuff, like tickling that goes too far, and even the difference between a secret and a surprise. We made this course at Nurture First because research shows that body safety education helps kids speak up sooner, and we want that for our family, for Scott and I, but also for you. So check the course out at nurturedfirst.com/bodysafety, and to save 10%, use the code ROBOTUNICORN. And just full disclosure here, we are the creators of this course, and we're so proud of it.
I don't think we talked about this yet, but how can we choose what is the right middle ground, I would say, for setting boundaries with our kids, even though they're stuck over something? And in certain situations, we need to hold that boundary versus other ones we're like, you know what? Yeah, probably like this kite thing. Go ahead, do it. It's fine. You figure it out on your own. Mm-hmm. Yeah, how can we determine what the right middle ground is? Because I think based on this conversation, if you're listening to it with bias in either direction, you could either be like, well, kids just need to learn that sometimes, yeah, it sucks. They have to have their tears of futility and all that.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. But yes,
we didn't talk about that yet.
That's key. Yes,
right?
We will get there, of course.
They have to have that. And it's just, these are what our rules are. Mm-hmm. And you don't really change it. And you're like, that's what Jess is telling me is okay. Mm-hmm. Versus, or you could go the other direction and someone could listen to you during this conversation and be like, well, yeah, you know what? Why am I making them do these things?
I don't want to break their will.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter that much if you think about it. Most of the decisions we make as parents, they're not live or die decisions. We have certain house rules. And if you're like me, I'm questioning, well, why are these rules here in the first place? So if our kids are like that, you could also think, yeah, maybe I should kind of let them do that thing. And then you tend to be a little bit more lenient on everything, maybe to the point of being too lenient or permissive with them. Mm-hmm. So how do you figure out what that middle ground should be?
A gray area into this discussion that can be black and white. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Good question. There's not like one right answer, of course. But I like to think, as a parent, I like to think our job is to let them be children, first off, because the entire job of childhood isn't just like preparing to be an adult. B, also think about what do I want to teach my child about, how to behave and what kind of behavior helps them and hurts them, right? So the boundaries that I want to set are around behavior that's not going to be helpful for them long term. Or hurts other people or hurts property or hurts themselves. And then behavior, things I can be more lenient on, like the kite, like making a kite and you're stuck on it. And, I'm an adult and I'm like, this kite makes absolutely no sense. It's not going to work. But okay, because I want you to continue to try new things and see if it works and make mistakes or not. Right? So I think that there is a balance between what we're firm on versus what we can be more flexible on. But we also want to make sure that we stay in the position of leadership. And so I'll give an example. I think I just shared this on Instagram last night. Like you're at a party and you have to leave the party at 4:30 because you have to go home, and for whatever reason, you have to go home. And that's the agreed upon time. You told your child you're going home at 4:30, and 10 minutes before or whatever, you give a warning, hey, we're going at 4:30. And your child's like, I'm not actually going to go. So nice try. And they run away and they're like, yeah, we're not going. In a moment like that, I would say that's where you can take your child's opinion into consideration and be thoughtful and caring and considerate. But also it's okay to be the leader in that situation and say, this is the plan. This is what we agreed upon. I know you're not going to like it. You don't want to leave your friends. That makes sense. But I'm not changing my mind and we're going. And it's okay to hold those boundaries in those situations too. And when you never do, and you always are like, well, they're stuck on it, but it kind of makes sense because they want to stay longer. But your child ends up learning that every time they push back on anything that you say, you're going to change your mind. And your child's going to stop trusting that the boundaries that you're setting or the things that you say are actually things you're going to stick to. And you're going to get a lot more pushback down the road. So it's not about like every single time, like, okay, one time it doesn't matter and you can say an extra 30 minutes, right? Like people take it so black and white. But on the whole, are you that trusted leader? And when you say something, does your child actually believe that you're going to stick to it?
So my immediate thought here though is if you give in some of the times, and this is not even necessarily what I believe we should be doing, but if you give in some of the times, you're essentially using intermittent reinforcement so that they'll push back even more because sometimes, not all the time, and they never really know when it's going to be, you're going to say, yeah, we can stay later. It's fine. Whatever. It doesn't really matter that much. So isn't that the most powerful type of reinforcement, that intermittent reinforcement where you're not always giving in, but sometimes you are giving, like reinforcing it?
I guess maybe a better way to do it would be, again, we're getting like into such specifics here, but
yeah.
Okay,
I feel like this is real life, though.
This is real.
It's even I don't know, like ice cream or going to the grocery store and sometimes allowing them to have a treat or I don't know. There's all kinds of different scenarios that you could intermittently reinforce and therefore.
And most parents probably do.
Yeah, like us as well.
Including us.
So aren't you therefore reinforcing it even in a more strong way?
I guess what I would want to probably do in an ideal world would be like, okay, so you're going to leave at 4:30. You leave at 4:30 because you said you were going to do it. And like, that's what's happening this time. If you don't, and for whatever reason, like, oh, I no longer have to be home. Something's changed back there. It's a conversation like this one time. And this is why my boundary is changing, right? Like having that actual conversation with your child, letting them in on your thought process instead of just like, oh yeah, fine, whatever, you push back. So, and like being the leader, like, oh, it's my choice that we're going to stay longer because this thing changed at home. And now we can stay an extra 30 minutes. We're going to leave at 5 instead. Having the conversation versus letting the child kind of think like their pushback is what changed your mind. And then alternatively, if it's a little bit flexible, then maybe, because I know some kids get like really stuck on time. Like if you say 4:30, they're like, they just get really stuck on that. But you can be like, we might have some wiggle room in terms of when we leave today, but I'm going to let you know when we have like 15 minutes to go. And then, when I say that, then I want you to kind of have in your head that you got to start getting ready to go. So like there's ways that we can do it where you're having that honest conversation with your child, but you're still the leader. I think the difference between the two of like when it becomes intermittent reinforcement is when you've kind of succumb because your child's like putting that pressure on you like so hard in order to stay or get the ice cream cone or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Like for me, it's like if I was out with the girls and I don't ever usually get them an ice cream when we're out, like just on a day-to-day basis. But if the one day I decided, today we're going to get an ice cream, I wouldn't wait till they were like, Mommy, please, please, please. I'd be like, hey, you know what I'm thinking? Today, let's get an ice cream. Like I would say it versus doing it because I feel like coerced by a 5-year-old.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I think that does make sense. Because I think it could be easy for them to link then the two, especially when they're those older ages, like in the 5 to 7, 5 to 9 range that you were talking about. Yeah. That they could start linking that they push back. And not always, but sometimes my parent just gets exasperated enough that they'll just let it happen.
Right. That's huge. It's not about letting things happen because you're exasperated. That doesn't give leadership to me. And then your child's like, ooh. Okay, well, if I just push just hard enough, then I can do it. Another strategy that I've been really liking lately that actually I learned from you, of all people.
Really?
Is, how sometimes kids...
Say it louder.
Kids in the car, like they kind of get stuck on things like, hey, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And like they're asking you 5 million times.
Yep.
And sometimes when like kids get stuck on certain like things, like, are we there yet? We will come back with like snarky responses or like rhetorical questions. Like, do you think we're there? Like I do that. I've done that before.
Yep.
Because our one child would ask that constantly. Like, does it look like we're there? Like,
we just left preschool. What do you think?
Yeah. Are we home yet? You know what our house looks like? You know what our driveway looks like? You know what it feels like when the van is in park and I'm opening the door because we're home? And none of those things are happening. So no, we're not home. You know what I mean? Like just being sassy in response back. Not that I'd say exactly like that. But something that you are really good at, and I think it really helps the stuckness, is just being like radically honest. No, we're not home. Like I notice that you don't like get into the same, like sometimes I go into like this rhetorical questions. Does it look like we're there? Whereas I noticed that when our daughter asks you, she's like, nope, we're not there yet. We're here driving down the road. And she's like, oh, okay. And it's just the simplest thing. And I've been starting to do that more and more. Like if a child's like, well, you can't tell me what to do. Even in therapy, it's like, no, I can't. You're right. Or you're not the boss of me. Yeah, I'm actually not. Just being like super honest in these like big things that are pretty much invitations often for like a power struggle. And like, we want to give that back. I've noticed that like just stops stuckness in its tracks and stops these power struggles in its tracks when we just like answer honestly. Instead of like, well, I mean, I am your parent. Yeah, I might not be your boss, but like, it's my job to tell you what to do. It's like, yeah, you're right. I'm not the boss of you and I can't force you to do stuff. So how are we going to work together to get ready for school? It just totally changes the mood. So anyway, new strategy that you kind of inspired, but I've been kind of stuck on, quote unquote.
Just radical, concise honesty.
Yeah. I just kind of think it's respectful to our children and it actually just like stops a power struggle in its tracks when you kind of want to be petty back at them. So I wanted to share that because I've been finding that really helpful. And it all started with you answering, are we there yet? And being like, no, we're not. Just so simple. And she accepted it. And I was like, I guess I should stop.
You never told me this.
I know.
You thought it was so wise.
Well, I can't tell you everything.
That's interesting.
Sometimes I have to save
I'm going to have to tell everyone about this. The fact that
you
thought I was so smart and wise that you're taking what I... Okay. Well, I think back to, and maybe I've mostly always been like that. Maybe not. I don't know. But I remember traveling a lot for work and having to cross borders and talking to border control agents. And I noticed, like, when I was in the airport doing that, the people that they questioned the longest were the ones that spoke too much.
Yeah.
Spoke too quickly, tried to over-explain everything.
Yeah, it almost gives like, I'm not confident, so I'm just going to like, I'm nervous, I'm going to ramble on, right?
Yeah. So I feel in general, I kind of took that at that point when I was traveling that much as the way I typically like to communicate. Just short and to the point. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm always making fun, teasing, whatever, playing with the girls too. So I'll do that kind of stuff too if they ask that question. Because it's not like I always respond like that.
No, but
I will sometimes make jokes and say,
be playful.
It'll be about 72 hours until we get home from here. And they're like, no, it's not, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's fine because that's engaging them through play. So that's like the other strategy, right? But I've been really thinking about that and using it. And I'm just like, man, it really does just stop. Maybe it just stops me from being like, this is a ridiculous question and I don't want to be stuck on this. So I'm just going to like give a ridiculous question back. You know what I mean?
Well, and sometimes I feel like in the past, at least, maybe not less so now, but you used to over-explain things.
Yeah.
Because you felt bad about what you were saying.
Yeah.
Or the response that you had. Mm-hmm. So you'd have to over-explain, but then that sort of, like you said, invites people to struggle with you a little bit
Exactly.
more.
Whereas if you're just clear, you know, the kid's like, you know, do I have to take the bus today? Yep. Instead of like, oh, well, maybe I could drive if I rearrange this in my morning. Like, no. Yeah, you have to take the bus today. Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't want to. I know. You know, it's just simple, but then they could rest in the fact that like, I'm confident this is what's happening, so they don't have to try the whole morning to change my mind, so I bring them in, or whatever it is, right? Anyway, that's the tip.
Do you feel like in general I handle stuckness with the girls very well?
I think.
Trick question. I do amazing. No, I'm just kidding.
Like, what are you getting at?
No, I'm just wondering, like, if you...
Scott's seeking a compliment.
No.
Oh.
I'm actually seeking... What I'm seeking from you is there anything that I should be trying to improve
criticism. Yeah. Okay.
when their brains get stuck? Because I would say, in general...
I know what. I know.
Stuckness, maybe the tantrums that come along with it, are probably the things that are the most grating for me.
Yeah.
Out of anything else. The fact that they can't get their brain unstuck, sometimes it bothers me.
Yeah. I think you've come a long way and you now understand that they're not logical. So you're not expecting them to be logical.
Yeah, but still, even in the moment...
Sometimes you do get frustrated. You're like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, who doesn't? I do too. So I don't think that you're so like unique in that because I even get like that too with them too, right?
It's not as though I think it's unique. I'm just wondering, are there any other ways that I can... I haven't thought of here or that I haven't used here?
One thing when they get stuck on like creative tasks, I think sometimes you can overcomplicate it, like the kite, for example, where you're like, well, that's not going to work because this is, instead of just like letting them just see what happens, right? So I think that is one thing where it's like you want to come in and like, okay, let's 3D print, like not that you said this, right? But let's 3D print and, you know.
You think I did that today though?
No.
Because you just said I wasn't going to help with it because we don't have the stuff for it. And it's not going to work exactly what you were saying. So...
Yeah, but I think sometimes you just say nothing. Like, I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Let's just try and fly the kite and with the string and we'll see what happens. If it doesn't work, then we'll go from there. Like, I think there's been a few times where you've been explaining stuff and then I look at our oldest daughter, she's got an eye roll going on because she wasn't necessarily like hoping for a full-blown explanation on something. She's just trying to say.
Well, did you not hear me this weekend when our friends came over? I said, sometimes I'm just testing our girls to see how long it takes for me to receive an eye roll from them.
Oh, it doesn't take long half the time.
By explaining something to death.
Right. Okay.
So I'll just explain the reason why a light switch turns on a light on the ceiling and just over-explain it to see how far I can go before I get a big eye roll from the girls, especially our oldest, who will just be like, Dad, I don't care.
Yeah. Well, and they'll tell you.
Yeah.
But I would say that's the one thing. It's like sometimes I noticed that a few times with our oldest where she like asks you one little question and then it becomes a whole thing. And you can just see she's like totally lost interest. She's just like rolling her eyes. And it's like, well, I don't want you to lose interest in this thing that you're interested in just because now you have this whole logical explanation when really you just wanted to do this creative like one thing with it, right? So, but otherwise I think you handle it really well. I don't know.
I'll try and work on that.
That's my one feedback. Like, don't be such a grown-up all the time. Sometimes just...
That is hard. Well, yeah, that's hard to do.
Yeah, sometimes just let them be kids and make a big mistake and it makes no scientific sense why they're doing it and they just need to figure that out on their own. It's good because I'm not that smart, so it works for me. in terms of that, because science, like, I don't know how to make a kite that's going to be perfectly adaptable to the outdoor conditions, but sure, I'll tie a string on a paper for you and we'll see how it goes. That's my kind of craft. But I would be the same with emotions, right? Where I like get too deep into it and they're just like, oh, I mean, it's fine. I just kind of felt sad for a second, you know?
Yeah.
So we both just have our things.
Yep.
Anyway, we should wrap this up.
Yes.
This was an enjoyable conversation. We had a lot of interruptions, but I hope you enjoyed the sweet little voice that came on throughout these 2 episodes. And there's a lot of like different ways we can go. I think potentially doing something on neurodivergence and stuckness, kind of like just a deeper level of this topic could be helpful in the future if people are interested, or just even, you know, kind of talking about ADHD brains, I think could be an interesting topic.
Have we not done that yet?
No, we haven't done one specifically on ADHD.
I know we've talked about it. It's been on our list for a long time.
Because foreshadow, we are working on something.
Oh, right. Okay, don't say too much though, okay?
By the time this episode comes out.
Well?
Yeah, it's going to almost be time.
Oh, okay, cool.
Anyway, a little foreshadow.
Mm-hmm.
Keep an eye out. And blessings.
Thanks for listening.
Well, one last thing. It was Scott's birthday recently, and then I told him as a prank I was going to text all his friends, "How's your heart?" And I haven't done it yet, so I should try and do that before the next episode so we can see what kind of
I have to change the passcode on my phone. I don't want you texting people that.
Yeah, I just want to see what would happen.
Make sure my phone is always in my pocket or something.
I bet you their response is going to be like, "Jess?" ?
Yeah, probably. I bet.
But anyway, I'm going to try that before the next episode.
I've been hacked. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thanks for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed the last 2 episodes on Stuckness. And yeah, we'll see you again next week with our next episode.
It's good. Hey friends, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We are glad that you are here. If you enjoyed today's episode and found it interesting, we'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a rating and a review. Scott and I actually sit down together and read them all. A 5-star rating helps us share our podcast and get these important messages out there. Thank you so much for listening, and we can't wait to talk to you again next time.